Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of The Truth Is Here. You are watching The Mahdi Has Appeared TV. There is a number on your screen. Please do use it. Please do call us. Let's hear from you. All you on social media, do keep it clean, do keep it respectful, and again, let's hear from you. Let's have a productive dialogue. So I'm joined by my very, very good brother Waqar.
It's a pleasure, my brother. Thank you very much again.
Alhamdulillah. God bless you, my bro. And, thank you for joining me.
Pleasure.
So our last few episodes, we've been talking about why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends religion, or what the true purpose of religion is, which is to establish authority, and to establish that authority with a designated representative, an appointed man who speaks on behalf of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and conducts the affairs of the people according to what God wants.
Yeah.
Now, how does this apply today? So I thought it would be an interesting thing for the next few episodes. I think it would be an interesting sort of way of looking at things if we were to try and relate it to reality, relate it to
present time.
The problems that people see in the world and so on. So today, I think generally, obviously, one of the biggest problems we have in the world is poverty. Right? The inability for a person to afford what it is they need. Right?
I mean, just to afford basic necessities.
Literally.
I mean, it's become such a challenge for the average person. It's unbelievable that, because we know, and we've covered this in our previous programs, that there is not a lack of sustenance. It's the way it's distributed and the way it's been wasted.
Of course,
So it's due to that. It's due to that wastage, that we are seeing the state of the people that are in now.
Well, like another way of putting it is, we've got a few with a massive abundance, and a majority with a lack. Right? Like they don't have the basic, as you said, needs to sustain themselves. Right? So today in particular, I want us to focus on the issue of homelessness. So why does homelessness come about? There's various reasons, but one of those reasons is the increase of house prices, and there is something which is very seldom addressed in especially sort of bigger, more established cities. One word, I'm sure you'll have heard of this word because of obviously your outlook on life and so on. Gentrification. You know, that issue, we see it especially right now in London. Where you have an area of the city which is poor. And it basically, the people who live there are moved to somewhere else. In order that the properties they live in are freed up to begin introducing higher prices to that area. Thus increasing the value of the properties and so on and so on.
I mean, the social divide has increased immensely over the last couple of decades between the classes.
Right.
For example, only yesterday I was reading that here in the UK, in Bristol, they're building a wall. They've built it. I mean, they did it in the middle of the night. Under police protection, the council workers, they literally separated the rich areas from the poor areas.
That's insane.
But I mean, the thing is, because the rich they don't feel safe anymore. But what do you expect? Because the middle class has shrunk, so you have two extremes. You have the very rich and you have the very poor.
Brilliant.
And when the very poor are like just a street away, and they see their children, how they're dressed, with their toys, playing outside, the fancy cars, the good-looking houses. I mean, it makes people, think that, what have we done wrong? Yeah, and what have they done right, or what's actually happening? So it creates this divide that creates an envy, a jealousy that creates like a criminal mind. Yeah, no fault of their own.
Right.
Because they're literally made to think this way. Yeah, they're made to think this way because of the situation and the surroundings they're in.
It's funny you're saying about the essentially what we know as the class system.
Yeah.
Where you've got upper, middle, lower class, right?
Yeah.
And that class system has only come about because of something that's been around, well, for the last couple of 100 years, and that is capitalism.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So that sort of, as in this being the fruit of that tree.
Yeah.
That obviously proves, like, as in what you're saying now, the fact that the rich have to be divided from the poor.
Yes.
Right? And this, by the way, on a separate note, is something A-Sadiq from him, his peace, warned about.
Yes, he did.
The rich being eaten by the poor.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I'm glad you've mentioned that.
Yeah, that's coming soon, by the way, and we're seeing the beginnings of it.
That's why the rich are trying to build walls around,
right? To protect themselves,
protect themselves and their wealth.
Right. This is the point. So this has all obviously come about, right, for a reason, and that is this sort of one-sided system that doesn't actually fairly address the issue at hand, which is that of availability stroke sustenance stroke, like, you know what I mean, like this whole kind of idea that everybody must be provided for. And obviously it's always the responsibility of those in power to ensure that this is the case, right? And this is what we see. Like, the main reason we're referring to this today, the issue of homelessness, is to show that the, like, let's call them the establishment, have not been taking their responsibility as, they should. And they've let everyone down by allowing this state to come,
I mean, if this is the progress that humanity has reached over the centuries,
right?
Yeah, and all we have to show after going through this technological age, is that a person cannot afford a basic human right. I mean, it just shows that whatever has been implemented in the past hasn't really worked.
Yeah, it's failed.
It's a failure.
Yeah, and this is the thing, like what we see in Western societies now, right, is that more and more people cannot afford to buy a home and instead rely on renting a home. Like they like the majority of the populations have to rent their homes for literally the majority of their lives. And if they can afford a home, it's on the basis of taking out a mortgage, which is a French word for death contract until you die. So the people generally, and this has been the case especially in the UK for the last 45-50 years, for example, where people have to take out a mortgage in order to afford the house that they live in. And they end up spending a good 35-40 years of their lives paying off that mortgage. And if they don't, like, as in if they miss payments, they default, and therefore their home is repossessed. The bank takes it over and then sells it on at a profit, because regardless of what happens, the bank has to make money. And the mortgage is given on the basis of interest rates, which the government dictates. And we see this across the Western world, by the way. And obviously it's being applied elsewhere. And so this loan, this debt has to be paid off with interest. Thus obviously pushing the price of the home up. The house becomes more more expensive.
You pay more interest than the actual cost of what the property is over the years.
And so when it comes time to sell, and this is the thing that ties in with inflation, by the way, this whole process, when it comes time for you to sell, you expect to have made a profit.
Yeah.
You know, and this is the thing, like perceived market value on the property always puts the price rising after, like, if you compare house prices today to 10 years ago, they've definitely gone up.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And this is the point. Like, this is across the board.
Yeah, but if you look at it, the inflation has gone up. Cost of living has gone up.
Everything has gone up. Right?
So, literally, it's like...
The only thing that hasn't, by the way, I'm sorry to interrupt you, is, like people's incomes.
Yeah, that hasn't gone. We have, like, a problem. Look, being homeless... Yeah, I mean, it's due to a lot of factors in society. You know, the first one we discussed, you know, I mean, the unequal distribution of wealth. And there's something that's called unemployment and underemployment. Meaning, if you're unemployed, you basically don't have that income to afford the housing or the rents.
For sure.
Or if you manage to get a job, and it's like a part-time job, then even then it's not enough,
of course not,
to cover it. But whose fault is that? It's the fault of the society itself that has created such an economic climate that these people don't have a chance to even get onto the property ladder.
Well, this is the thing, like, if basically like the reason you're saying it's the fault of the society is if the society accept it and go with it, that means they've allowed it to be applied onto themselves. Now, a lot of people argue, okay, but we don't have a choice. Actually, people do have a choice, and this is why we've seen in many parts of the world over time this idea of revolution, this idea of, like, you know, people rebelling against the system, and so on and so on and so on. But obviously that's dependent on the society, the consciousness in that society, and so on. So, okay. Now, obviously, we're not calling for anything like that, but we are calling for awareness and understanding of the reasons why people are suffering, why people don't have the means to support themselves. Yeah, we
have this DAO has the solution. At the basic root for all of these problems which have been presented.
Yeah, and these are problems which do exist. No one can deny them. The statistics are all online. In fact, to support that, in terms of homelessness, I think we should bring up our first slide. Now, this is what I said would shock you. So, okay, estimated homeless population in Pakistan, 8 million people in 2023. Out of every 10,000, that's 331. Right, individuals that don't have a home to to call their own, or to basically give them shelter, right? And obviously Syria being a war-torn country, again, that number is expected. But then underneath that, you've got Bangladesh with 5 million people, and that's a recognized poor country. Now, obviously, those populations, those numbers are the responsibility of the governing powers. The powers that obviously are in charge. Nigeria, like, all I know about Nigeria over the last decade or 20 years is that it's become more and more prosperous. Right? So, obviously, what that means is that there is a larger sort of percentage of people who are becoming wealthy, or the middle class is growing, etc. But again, 4.5 million people, right,
it's
in
a lot.
2022
it's a lot.
Are homeless. They don't have a home. They're on the street, basically.
It's like a population of like
a city, bro.
Even 2 cities in the West.
You understand? Like, that's shocking, brother. And this is the thing, like, the numbers go on. Like, if we were to bring up the rest of that, like, that sort of chart, you'll see that there are, like, okay, the Philippines, 4.5 million, Uganda, 4 million, Argentina, 3.6 million, Sudan, another war-torn country, 3 million. Next, we've got China, bro, China. 2.5 million, and that's tiny for their population. But that's from 2011. So obviously we don't know what it is now, right? Nepal, 2.5 million. I believe Nepal has a small population. But anyway, let's go to Egypt. Egypt, 2 million, right? And that's in 2020. Iraq, 2 million in 2014. Which means, obviously, like, that's...
The thing is, this is what's been registered and what they know about.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the issue with these numbers. These are numbers which, like you said, right, are the declared numbers.
They're declared numbers, yeah.
Right? They don't, like, we don't know how representative of what's going on the ground they are, right?
Yeah, I think it's much more than this. Yeah.
Well, this is the problem. Like, my issue is, right, and the reason I've brought this all up in the first place, right, is we're talking in the millions per country, bro. It's not, it's not a small number. If we do go on, right, like, from there we've got India, we've got the Democratic Republic of Congo with 1.7 and 1.5 million, and then we have Myanmar with 1.5 million, and then we get to Somalia, Zimbabwe, Peru, right? Now, I stopped at Peru because it dipped under the million mark, right? But Somalia, 1.4 million. Zimbabwe, 1.2 million. Peru, 700 million. Burkina Faso, 700,000, sorry. Peru and Burkina Faso. Now, the last thing I wanted to say, like, if we were to continue with this World Population Review, the UK... The United Kingdom it has 331,000 homeless individuals, right? And then that's, like you said, the official statistic from the last few years. Anyway, the point is, right, that it is definitely a problem. It is definitely a problem which we can see is growing. Yeah. And it's a problem that nobody is offering a solution to.
I mean, there is many solutions, like
but this is what I'm trying to say. The officials,
the question is, do they actually want to present a solution for this? Question. You see, that's the thing.
Well, like, okay, you would expect, right? And this is obviously for anyone who's listening to us to contend. You would expect that those in charge would want to address this issue, at the very least, for them to look good in the eyes of the people, right? Yeah. Oh, look, I've solved this problem, I've, reduced this as a leader, right? Yeah. Now, the issue is, right, they, like, these leaders, generally, the world leaders that we're talking about, have this training where they basically distract the people with issues that don't sort of address this major problem. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Right? And this is why we have this kind of, let's call it like fatigue or like kind of, I'm not interested, like this attitude of not being interested in politics generally in the populations. People all say the same thing. All politicians are crooks, all politicians are this, that, and the other. They don't actually have any sort of respect for them.
They're in it for themselves. This is the thing.
Exactly. Right? Now, why is this important? Because obviously they're the ones who have this responsibility to look after the affairs of the people that they lead. Yeah. Right? Yeah. Now, one thing that we bring attention to in this call is that leadership is established by God. Yes. Otherwise, it's fallible. Otherwise, that leadership basically is corrupt. It has no sort of divine guidance.
You're absolutely right, because in the past, when there's been examples of a divine successor leading a nation or a state, or a community, which we have many examples throughout the scriptures. Yeah. It's actually worked. It's been actually fair. Yeah, there's actually been a fair distribution of wealth. There's actually been people that have not been homeless. There's been safety, security within those communities. Prosperity. Exactly. Now the thing is, they was due to dark forces were not allowed to flourish. Yeah, because that ideology, and capitalism does not go in hand.
Of course
we have to get rid of one or the other.
Well, like in real terms, right? Every system that has been implemented in the world that is other than divine has, in one way or another, eventually failed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Whether it's socialism, whether it's capitalism, whether it's nationalism, you name it, like any of the isms, right, that have been applied on a population, right, over time have led to one form of failure or another.
Yeah.
And what we see in the West right now is decay. Like that decay takes the form of increased homelessness, increased joblessness, increased dependence on, like, you know, the likes of food banks, etc. And this kind of like illusion that everything's all right. But in reality, everyone knows it's not all right.
No, it's not right, yeah.
You know
they know this. I mean, for the people in the West or the people in Europe or the UK, their forefathers, they actually fought these two wars so that people would have safety and security, would not be poor. Yeah, there would be an equal distribution of wealth. They thought that because they fought for these rights, fought for these nations, fought for the future generations, that the future generations would be comfortable, would not be on the streets, and would have 3 meals a day,
right?
And they would not have to live on handouts.
You know what shocks me, like living in the UK and growing up here and like learning a bit about obviously the history here and so on. Okay, so my parents, like they go back to the 70s, right? And what I know in terms of house prices in the 70s. Okay, so you could afford a house, a nice detached house, right, for about £5,000 in the 70s.
Absolutely,
that was like an amazing home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That same home, right, in the 90s is 200,000, 300,000.
Yeah.
My parents, right, personally, my parents bought a home in Glasgow in Scotland for around 250,000 in like the mid-90s. Yeah. That same home in the 2017, 2018, 700,000. They sold it for that amount. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So basically what I'm saying is in the space of 2 decades, it's tripled in value. Yes. Right? Yes. Now, that's shocking. That really is shocking. Yeah. Now, like, as a person who's, like, as a young individual looking to sort of buy my own home or whatever, there's no way I can afford that.
There's no way.
Without help.
No, and as a young person growing up, I mean, starting on a basic salary, there's no way. And especially if you're planning on getting married, having a relationship, having children. Exactly. I mean, those plans will be massively delayed.
Of course, yeah. And like we're talking delayed until you're like in your 40s. Yeah. Which basically means that your whole kind of like your whole family life until retirement, if the average person is retiring at 65, 70, your whole family life is like 25, 30 years. Yeah. You know what I mean? Which is nuts when you think about it. Like, I mean, like people in like, you know, the sort of, like if you go back in history, people had longer family lives. Yeah. You know what I mean? Anyway, the reason we're talking about this, A-Sadiq, from whom his peace, addressed an issue which would help solve this in one of his sermons. Yeah. I believe it might have been the sermon of was it the sermon of clarification or the invitation to become the people?
He was mentioned in both.
Right.
Yeah, okay. This was mentioned in both.
The fact that there are many empty homes in the world.
Many. Have you seen the amount of empty homes in London?
This is my point. That like if those empty homes,
and even the owners of these empty homes, they have never stepped foot in those homes.
That's the crazy.
That's the crazy bit. Yeah.
Like basically, if those homes were redistributed as a sort of like form of justice, right, then the homeless problem would virtually disappear, if not entirely disappear.
Yes, it would.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's just one like one aspect from the many aspects we have to address.
Yeah.
Because homelessness is a problem. I mean, for somebody to not be able to have shelter,
yeah,
and have to like literally suffer the cold, suffer the like all kinds of weather out in the open, day in, day out, day in, day out, that's an injustice. That's a cruelty. That's a, like, whatever way you look at it, it's wrong.
Yeah. But do you know what's shocking? When you showed those slides, I mean, the top one was like an Islamic country. Yeah,
bro.
And most of these countries were Islamic countries.
Most are.
I mean, the thing is, isn't it? So basically, it's worse, in the Islamic countries where the basics, for religion, were there to make sure that this thing would never happen in society. So we're paying the poor tax,
right?
Yeah, and we're giving charity, but the thing is, it's not solving the problem. So what is it? Is it because it's a lack of money? Oh, it's not. Look, people are generous. People like to give.
Yeah,
we know what the problem is. The money never actually gets to the poor.
What that says is that there's obviously something broken.
Yeah, there's a break in the chain,
right?
For sure. There's corruption.
Okay. Thank you. And that's the big problem, right, that causes all of these issues, whether it's starvation, whether it's homelessness, whether it's poverty in general, you name it. And we like... over the next few episodes, inshallah, we will be like referring to narrations and other proofs of these issues, which obviously will help give a better understanding of why these issues happen and so on, and what these issues are, and how big the extent of these problems are, and what obviously our conclusion is, what we're trying to bring to the world, right, is the bringer of the solutions, right? We're trying to make everyone who's watching us understand that God doesn't want these problems to exist. God is just, God is fair, and therefore it would be unjust and unfair of God to expect these problems to fix themselves, and for that reason, he sends an individual, to the world to bring about the solutions, to bring about the fixes to these problems.
Absolutely. I mean, we're not sitting here just pointing out the problems.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're not. We're saying, yes, we do have a problem. We have a very serious problem.
Yeah.
But we also have a complete solution. Well, Al-Sadiq from his piece is presenting a solution. All we need to do, is actually implement what he's saying. And the only way it can be implemented, if the people out there, our audiences, our brothers and sisters out there, they actually come together and support this man, support this cause, because with their support, with your support, only then we can get rid of all these problems. But the thing is, isn't it? It's down to you. It's down to you, and you have to take that first step. Yeah, make that conscious decision. Yeah, that you are fully committed to the cause.
Well, in sort of support of what you're saying, right? A-Sadiq from his piece has taken in people from literally all walks of life.
Yeah.
And he himself has organized the sort of housing of all these people.
Yes.
Not a single person who's come under his care has gone wanting, has gone without shelter, has gone without
food.
Literally every aspect of their sustenance is covered.
Yeah.
Completely, without them needing to worry about it. And you're testament to that, and so am I.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, that number is growing. the people who are joining A-Sadiq's community are becoming they are growing in numbers.
Yeah.
And we're not talking just locally, we are talking on a global scale.
Mm-hmm.
And he, as the righteous shepherd, as the Holy Spirit, like, he cannot sort of accept,
Mm-hmm.
within himself, he cannot accept that any of these individuals goes wanting while he's comfortable.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And we've seen it.
Look, this is what a true imam is.
Exactly. This is the point.
Yeah. This is what a true leader is.
Yeah.
I mean, you look around and look at the leaders. Look at. Does the leader reflect the people? Absolutely not.
Wherever we go in the world, we
it's so hypocritical that these leaders, they stand up and they talk about homelessness, poverty, how to eradicate it, and they live in mansions that are worth millions. They drive cars that are worth millions. Their children go to the best schools.
Yeah.
They have access to the best healthcare system, unlike the poor. I mean, so look, if a poor person or someone that's working class gets sick, mm-hmm. or has a serious illness which they cannot afford the healthcare, automatically that's their from there it will lead to poverty from there, because they won't be able to pay for their whatever they need. They won't be able to work, and if you don't work for a while, you become unemployed. They'll lay you off.
Well, like, one of the reasons why we do see an increase in homelessness is that very issue. For one reason or another, an individual can no longer work, and the bills keep coming. That individual can no longer sustain those costs, and therefore ends up in a situation where obviously they have to be removed from their home, or they themselves have to leave their home, because they don't see another way out.
Mm-hmm.
They end up on the streets. They end up in situations, like compromising situations on themselves. And it's we see this actually, like, this issue growing. Like, we see it, I personally have heard of it, like, bro, like, we're talking over like a decade ago, right? I would, speak to people in the street, who are living on the street, like, because of the nature of my work, right? And I'd ask them how did you get this way, or so on, or whatever it is. And in a lot of cases, it was not through choice, obviously. It was not, through something they've done themselves. It's basically circumstantial. Like you said, they became ill, or they had a bereavement, or something or other that basically forced them out of their shelter.
Because there was not a system in place
to safeguard them.
To safeguard them,
literally.
That's what it was. And the thing is, the Ahmadi religion of peace and light has a system in place. It's not a man-made system. So that's why we can guarantee it works, because it's a system that has come from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's come from God.
And that's the thing, like, A-Sadiq, from him is peace, he doesn't, like, he doesn't mess around. He doesn't say things just for the sake of saying them. So when he's talking about this issue, when he's saying that, for what, like, it's like, okay, he talked about prayer being in housing the poor, prayer being in sustaining the poor, prayer being, like, he's saying that specifically because he's showing this contrast between what the people believe worship is, right, and what real worship is. Real worship is making sure that no one around you goes hungry.
I mean, praying 5 times a day. While your neighbor is starving and hungry,
or doesn't have a home.
That's evil.
And that's the thing. Like, that example, that number one example of Pakistan, a Muslim country, as you said, right, with 8 million homeless people, according to the numbers there. Let's bring up that slide again if we can. That's shocking, bro. For a country that calls itself Muslim, that it literally equates to 331 people per 10,000.
Yeah.
That don't have a home, that are out on the street.
But if you look down,
2023.
But if you look at Syria down there, it has 2,302 homeless
per 1,000.
But you can tell from there that that's due to political instability,
war. They've been at war for like a long time now. And it's been obviously that instability causes that, which is understandable.
It's understandable, that is.
Right. But Pakistan isn't in a state of war, hot war. They obviously have this rivalry with India.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a sort of stalemate, essentially.
But it's not even the rivalries that are causing the actual poverty and homelessness. It's actually corruption.
Absolutely. It has to be
It's corrupt to the core. That's the thing.
Right. And, like, by the way, like you saying that, right? Okay, so I would say nearly every Pakistani knows this.
Of course they do.
Right? That the way things are in Pakistan, corruption is like an expected part of society over there.
Yeah, I mean, you're expected to bribe people. You understand? You're expected to bribe people, and the people that are in authority over there, they expect you to pay for this.
It's mad.
From the side.
It's actually mad. And that obviously we have Islam being the country's sort of religion.
Look, the Islam is the way that the Muslims were meant to follow. They were meant to be followed, but this is where it went wrong, isn't it? When you start following books and start interpreting things your own way, Pakistan and Pakistan society is a result of this.
I'm laughing, but it is tragic.
It's tragic, really, but this is the result of it. I mean, you say you're a Muslim nation, and you value Islamic principles, but the thing is, you have never put them into practice in your communities, really applied, in your societies. So basically, you just like the narrations say that Islam will be just something that's on the apparent, just like the Quran will be just letters, with no meaning or essence. Meaning nothing will be applied.
Of course.
And it'll be read out aloud. It'll be read out in a very rhythmic, poetic way. But the thing is, whatever is written is never implemented by anyone or any of the officials or the leaders.
Yeah, and this is obviously a major contributor to what we've obviously addressed here.
Yeah.
So, in that situation, let's look at Pakistan directly, right? Pakistan has been under either military rule or some form of corrupt rule for as long as I can remember.
I mean, for nearly just 50 years, isn't it? It's just been dictatorship. I mean, even the so-called democratic rule over there, it's weird, and it's an Islamic country. It's an Islamic country, and the thing is, if you go through the Quran, you go through the narrations, there is no mention of any of this or people appointing their own leader. This is the argument from the beginning we've been trying to present and make people reflect upon that. This is the cause of all the problems that exist today.
Exactly. And the reason, what I was trying to refer to with Pakistan in particular, right, is, so the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, as we pointed out in the previous episode, said specifically, whoever dies and does not know the Imam of the time dies the death of ignorance. And he also said, whoever dies without having an oath of allegiance on their neck dies the death of ignorance. Right? So here we have a country, Pakistan, right, which is Muslim, right, and apparently applies Muslim principles on its affairs and how the country conducts itself. But that very same society, we know, is ignorant of the Imam of the time. We know doesn't have the Pledge of Allegiance or the Oath of Allegiance that would take them out of ignorance. And on that basis, we see these problems arising, i.e., this massive problem of homelessness.
So we could say that poverty, is connected to ignorance.
Absolutely. It has to.
There has to be a connection.
Right?
Yeah. It's due to this ignorance that we have the state of the world the way it is.
I couldn't have said it better, man, and this is the point.
It's what it is. It's the effects of poverty that are very detrimental.
Of course, yeah.
I mean,
this is one aspect of the effects. Tomorrow, if, inshallah, God willing, tomorrow we'll address the issue of hunger and starvation and the statistics that go with that.
Yeah.
And obviously there is a correlation between hunger and homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
There has to be.
There is, yes.
Logically.
Yes.
Right? So if you cannot afford a home, chances are you cannot, actually it's the other way around. If you cannot afford to feed yourself, then you're likely living on the street.
Yeah, and there will arise many more health issues, which will make the matter even worse.
For sure, for sure.
Then you have the being on the streets. You're open to crime,
violence, open to manipulation, open to all kinds of
exploitation.
Literally,
that's the thing. Because I've seen it in the people in the Middle East, in the war-torn areas, and especially the people that are homeless in Pakistan. Most of the people there, they go around begging. And thing is, these young people, they get exploited.
Of course they do.
I mean, it makes the condition even worse. Speaking
of that, right, here's something that I know directly because I've actually witnessed it. I've seen it, I've seen the footage myself.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about a sort of, let's call her around 40-something-year-old woman in Iraq. And she's openly selling her child because she can no longer afford to sustain that child. And we're talking the child being 2-3 years old. She says, I've got 4 children and this is the 5th. Mm-hmm. I cannot afford to feed this child, so I'm selling this child. I have to sell this child.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just from that, it makes you think, it made me think, okay, if she's having to do this, how is she living? In what condition is she, sustaining her family? What, I wonder what their home looks like. I wonder, how their meals look. Mm-hmm. And, you know what I mean? And, obviously, the situation that this woman finds herself is the responsibility of the person in charge of her country.
Yes.
Logically,
of course.
Right?
I mean, they go around and they expect even the poor to vote for him.
Thank you.
Yeah. When it's time for the campaigns to vote, they become the
most compassionate,
the champions and the representatives of the poor, the working class. But as soon as they get into office, it's what happened?
Get rid of this problem.
What happened? Nothing's been addressed years ago in past. Then people are disheartened. They're saying, "Oh, we have to get rid of this person. We have to get rid." Then comes another general election. The rhetoric starts again 6 months before that.
Literally.
And people basically fall for the same trap, and we've seen that happening. I mean, in this country for the last 50 years, I've seen it.
Right.
Basically, nothing is different. Nothing has really changed if you look at it.
What can you say? Okay, I believe we've come to the end of our time for today. We're getting a cutting in sound, but what we've learned today is that homelessness is a big problem. It is a global problem, and this is why I show so many countries. It isn't isolated to one place or another, and it is in the 2020s, it's an issue that shouldn't exist if we are, as developed as we think we are.
We aren't. Being technologically developed it doesn't guarantee anything. I mean, we thought that if we advanced that much, that homelessness and poverty would be least of our problems. Right. But actually, it's one of the major problems.
Literally, and we're talking like in the most developed and the least developed
countries. Yeah.
What can you say? Okay, so please stay tuned for more on these subjects. I'd like to thank my brother Waqar for joining me.
It's a pleasure, my brother. Thank you very much for having me.
God bless you. All you who are watching, do investigate this matter, this da'wah, this call. The Mahdi Has Appeared YouTube channel is there for free online. Just go there and investigate. Download The Goal of the Wise, and inshallah we will see you tomorrow. Good night, God bless, and thank you.